We've all been injured lifting weights. In this video, I'm going to tell you the 3 reasons you need to know why you get injured. First of all, it's not what you think. It's not actually so much mobility. So the first factor that we need to consider is training volume. So if we have an acute spike in our training volume and we're actually doubling our workload, for example, we're going from our maintenance volume, so let's say we're doing 10 sets per muscle group per week, and now all of a sudden, overnight, we're doing 20 plus sets per muscle group per week. And this will most likely lead to injury because of literally the load exceeding the capacity that our body can handle. So for those of you who don't know what training volume is, it's essentially sets and reps. And factor number 2 is psychosocial. I know, not very fancy, but sounds very complicated. And I guarantee this has happened to you, right? So let me use myself as an example. So before, I've done rack pulls, right? And I've done them heavy, near the end of the session, and bang, boom, my back snapped. I was in injury, I was in agony for months, right? Now, when I did rack pulls a few months ago, I tweaked my back once again. Not as severe, but in my head I thought, all right, here goes again, serious injury coming to my back. So essentially what psychosocial is that you become a bit more worried when you injure that specific body part. So you think a small little tweak is really, really serious. Another important thing that I should probably mention is that when you're in competition, so say you're playing a rugby match and you get a lot of adrenaline, of course, this will actually distract you from a lot of the pain. Whereas let's say I just tackled you, I just like hit you on the arm unexpectedly, most likely it's going to feel a bit more painful than in a competition state. And number 3 is tissue damage. Now, this happens when the load exceeds what your body is prepared for on that day. For example, there was someone bench pressing in my gym, right? He was bench pressing, I think, about 140 kg. Now, on that day, his pecs probably wasn't prepared for that exceeded load, and hence his pec, boom, it torn. So that's an acute example. Now let me give you a chronic example. So let's say you're building up to a marathon, right? So you're jogging, day by day, in a winter, whatever, hard work, right, bro, hard work. And then all of a sudden, because of this probably spike in training volume that a lot of people do without them noticing, and this chronic tissue damage going on, the Achilles tendon is just gonna go, screw this, and bang. So the important bit here is that when the loads on the body exceeds its capacity, it will most likely get injured. So what about rehab? Should we build a tissue's capacity to loading back up, or should we just do feel good things? Now, the first bit sounded quite sciencey, I know, but this bit, when I say feel good, what I mean is foam rolling or getting one of those like fancy piece of equipment and rubbing it on your skin and telling everyone in the gym like, bro, trust me, do this, man, you're gonna get PRs. Well, and just before I roast foam rolling, or not so much roast, but just tell you the truth, like I always do, there are some benefits, but not as many as people think. So it's important to realize that these feel-good pieces of equipment that we use all the time, it doesn't actually lead to structural changes, and I'll explain what I mean in a second. So if you ask a lot of people, they will say something like, yeah man, you should be foam rolling and you should be doing that on a lacrosse ball and that and that and that, because that will like change the collagen fibers, bro, and the muscle fibers will align. Well, no, that doesn't make sense, because if you look at the vast majority of research, it comes down to like back in the day, using like a hard piece of equipment on rats, and like I said in previous videos, if you actually think about it logically, like makes sense to it, and I get passionate now, but if you think you squat with, like, let's say people squat with 200 kg, right, and they think, boom, why is the collagen fibers or the muscle fibers, why aren't they just moving bang in alignment, or why aren't you getting injured? Well, you need a massive amount of force in order to change these structural changes. Like a foam roller, although it's going to give you pain, it doesn't actually mean it's changing the structural change. Now, I think I drilled it into your head enough. Okay, getting back on track. So biomechanics is probably not as important as we think, right? And biomechanics, essentially, in simple terms again, the efficiency of our movements, right? So when it comes to performance, yes, tick, it's important, because if you're a powerlifter, if you're a weightlifter, being in certain good positions, that's real important, because you want to hit the PRs, you want to win a competition, you want to move efficiently and effectively as possible. But when it comes to injury prevention, maybe not so much. However, caveat once again, because I'm telling the truth, not trying to sell you shit, is that when you're working under high loads, and I'll give you an example in a second, it probably is quite important. That goes with most things, right? it's not yes and no all the time, but let me explain. So let's say you do a squat, right? So you do a squat and boom, your knee caves in. When you've got no weight, like, you know, when people squat and then like knees start coming in a little bit, when you have no weight, you're probably not going to get injured, especially if you can squat 200 kg, right? That's going to be like, oh yeah, that's just that little thing. But here's the thing, when you're squatting with 200 kg, right, and your knee caves in, boom, that load is probably going to follow that direction, and then you're going to get an ACL tear. Okay, so let's talk mobility. Now, if you look at the vast majority of research there, let's say you have good mobility, right? There's very little research showing that good mobility is really good for injury prevention. Although again, I will say for performance, again, ping, it is quite important. Injury prevention, not so much. I'm back on the bandwagon of talking about foam rolling, right? Because when people think mobility, bang, let me lie on a yoga mat, let me get this foam roller out. Oh, it feels so painful, man. It must be doing something, right? However, again, I will say this again and again and again. And if you look at the vast majority of research, not just handpick one study. That's such a common thing that people do. They just handpick a study. I have been guilty of this myself. But anyway, getting back on track, vast majority of research. Here's what it is. Foam rolling, again, does not lead to structural change. I think I'll draw that in enough, right? It is a neurophysiological change, meaning it will relax the muscles around the joint, and therefore it might increase the range of motion. In fact, a lot of research has said it will increase the range of motion. So with all this information, what should you actually be doing for injury prevention now? Here it is. So in my opinion, in most cases, I will use active range of motion, right? So this means, let's say you do a Romanian deadlift, or yeah, stiff leg deadlift, whichever. You load the bar, right? So you're doing it with load and you're doing it with time under tension. Now, you've loaded the bar, now you do heavy eccentrics, right? So eccentric meaning you're focusing on a downward portion of the movement. This is actually going to add more sarcomeres to the muscle in series and actually have structural changes on a cellular level to the muscle. Not passive mobility, which is all these fancy pieces of equipment like foam rolling. So if you want to get better, if you want to focus on injury prevention, focus on actually doing something, not lying there on a foam roller thinking you're at the beach. To summarize why injuries happen, right? I'm going to give you the not so fancy answer. It is because of all three of these factors, most probably combined. So that were tissue damage, psychosocial, and of course training volume. So just acutely ramping it up overnight. So those are the three factors. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it informative, please leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with me here? Do you disagree? Of course you can disagree. Maybe, I don't know. Just let me know your thoughts. I thought I'd crush this video, man. I enjoyed it. For some reason, I always think like, I'm always I seem like I'm very negative towards when I'm making these videos, but in reality, man, I'm a positive guy, man. Like always, stay positive, stay smiling. Let's get it, and I'll see you in the next one.